Have a review of the graphs of sine and cosine now. So this is fun. We got the basic equations here. You just got to be familiar with them and what all their different pieces mean, which I kind of have written down below. So let's see, we got A is the amplitude. That's going to be how high it goes from the midline up and down to the minimum and maximum of the wave. I have the pictures of them down here, right? So this is the amplitude, this distance right here and right here in both of them. That is the amplitude, so that A value that's right in front, okay? Next thing that we generally pay attention to is the D value. That's the vertical shift, okay? So the vertical shift is going to tell us where this midline is. So if there's no vertical shift, then it's just on the x-axis. So those two go hand in hand, the amplitude and the vertical shift. We pretty much identify those first, and we do what I always called the roadmap, which is when we kind of put like dotted lines up and down like that at the minimum, maximum, and then this midline. Next things are a little bit trickier. Most of the time we figure out this B value first, which is going to help us with the period. So I have that right here, the period. That's how long it takes the graph to repeat itself. So if we look at these graphs, they are repeating themselves after a certain amount of time, and that is the period. We find that by doing 2 pi over b. And we don't really need to worry about the absolute value of b because I do not believe we're ever giving you a negative b value. So it's just 2 pi over b. And that's going to help you figure out, basically it's a horizontal stretch or shrink, but it's going to tell you exactly how long it takes to repeat itself. And something that's really important that we did is figured out what the x scale is, which is basically going to be how far apart the most important points are. And we always found this by doing the period divided by 4. And on these graphs right here, I'm going to make a giant dot. We have big old dot, 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 right? So these are the main points of the sine and cosine graph, and those are going to evenly split the period into 4 sections, which is why we use this x scale, period divided by 4. All right. Last thing we got is the C value. C value is going to be basically where our starting point is. It's going to be a horizontal shift, which we often refer to as a phase shift. And it's going to tell us where this point moves to in sine or where this point moves to in cosine. Now, some other things, this is a positive sign. So positive sign is going to, that marker's really big now, is always going to start on the midline and it's going to go up. A negative sign value is going to still start on the midline, okay, but it's going to go down first. And for positive cosine, it's always going to just start on top, and a negative cosine is always going to start at the bottom. No, that's not how you spell bottom. Oof. Bottom. Alrighty. So that's the basics of what we need to know about these things. So A is the amplitude. Period is found by doing 2 pi divided by b, which then gives us the x scale, period divided by 4. Then we have a vertical shift, which brings us where the midline is going to be. And then we have a horizontal shift, which basically gives us a where the starting point is going to be. Now, one thing that's important is the b value must be factored out. So if it's not, then we need to do that ourselves, which luckily for you, I started us off with an example like that. So right here, this b value is not factored out. So we need to do 2 and force factor this out, which is going to give us a pi over 4 in there. So our amplitude is going to be 3. That's the number in front. That negative says we're going to be reflected. So it's a sine graph. So that means that we're going to start in the middle and we're going to go down, right? So we're going to start in mid and then go down. The period, so that's always 2 pi divided by that b value. Our b value is 2 this time. That's going to give us pi. We're going to immediately figure out what our x scale is, which is just going to be that period divided by 4. And that's what each one of these tick marks is going up by. So this is going to be pi over 4. This would be 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, aka pi, and then 5 pi over 4, and so on. And it goes backwards as well. Our phase shift is going to be, it's the opposite of what it says. So it says minus pi over 4. That means we're really going positive right pi over 4. That luckily lines up with our x scale really nicely. And then last but not least, we have that we're going down 1 for our vertical shift. And that is exactly what we're going to start with. So I'm going to go down 1, and I'm going to put little dotted lines, and then I'm going to go up and down the amplitude. So 1, 2, 3, put a little dotted line, down 3, 1, 2, 3. put a little dotted line. Next, I'm going to start off with my starting point, which is going to be a right pi over 4 that I know is starting on the midline because sine starts in the middle. So I'm going to go right pi over 4. I'm going to put a big old point there so I know that's where I'm starting. And then I'm just going to follow the pattern. So a negative sign goes down to the next little roadmap. Then we come back up top, and down. And we just follow this pattern over and over and over. And then we can go backwards. It's like the most fun you've ever had, right? So there we go. This is a little messy. Sorry about that. Don't forget to put the arrows on the end. And if you have a cosine, not cosine, if you end kind of on an upwards or a down one, you should always curve off the graph and point it back down. You don't ever want to like go like this because that's not what the graph does. Alrighty. All right. Next we got a cosine graph. So it's already been factored nice for us. So amplitude's going to be 2, no reflection. That means we're starting at the top. Period is going to be, again, 2 pi divided by 2. That's more of a coincidence. Our x scale is going to be pi over 4 again. And again, that's just what these values are going up by right there. Our phase shift is now plus pi over 4, which means we're really going to the left, negative pi over 4. And we're still going down 1. So roadmap down 1, start with that. Then I'm going to go up and down the amplitude. So up 2 and down 2 from that value. Next, I'm going to make an obnoxious point right here, following these two things. So I'm going left pi over 4, which is 1 x scale, and I'm starting at the tippy top of the graph. And then we just follow the pattern, which is that once we reach the top, we have to go back to the middle. Same thing, once we reach the bottom, we have to go back to the middle. So it just gives us this nice repeating pattern over and over. And you need to do at least 2 full periods, and I've done way more than that. All right. Here we got some working backwards. So what we're going to do for these ones is this starting point is telling us a lot of things. So number 1, we know that this is going to be a negative sine because it starts in the middle and goes down. We know that this one is going to be a positive cosine because it starts at the top. Other things we know. So this one, it has a midline at 0 and it has an amplitude going up and down 2. This one looks like it has a midline at 0 as well and an amplitude of just 1. So kind of solving both these at the same time, that might be a little confusing. Just kind of realize that now. For period, it's always easier if you can start at 0, and we're just going to go until the graph starts to repeat itself, which is right here. So our period, it looks like for this one, is pi. Our b value is found by doing 2 pi divided by that period. So we're going to do 2 pi divided by pi, which is going to give us that the b value is 2 for this one. Over here, this one's a little trickier, okay? It only went from a maximum to a minimum. That's only half the period. So half the period is going to equal 2 pi. That means a full period equals 4 pi, and our b value is found by doing 2 pi over that period. So that's going to be 2 pi over 4 pi, which is going to be 1/2. And last but not least is we have the starting value here. So this starting value is telling us that we're moving the whole graph to the right. I think that's pi over 2. And this one, we're not moving it at all. So that means that there's no phase shift for this one. So this graph, if we kind of throw it all together, we have a negative 2. So a negative because it's starting in the middle and going down. Sine starts in the middle. B value was 2. We have a phase shift that's going to the right. So we do the opposite. And then we have no vertical shift. So I'm just going to do plus 0 there just to be kind of precise. This guy over here, we're going to do y equals a positive 1 cosine. So I'm just going to be super exact here. You do not need to write that. 1/2 x minus 0 because I'm not doing any phase shift and I'm not going up or down. So you don't need to do either of those zeros, but that's just being nice and precise here. All right. Applications, everyone's fave. So here they gave us a random graph. They gave us some information about these. These are basically points. 170th day of the year has a daylight time of 15 hours. So I'm just going to guesstimate where that is on this little graph and just put a point there. On the 353rd day, we're down here at 6 hours. Okay, so that's going to give us that. From here, we're basically going to do the exact same thing we just did with these ones. We're going to choose one of these as our starting point. I'm going to choose this one. We need to find the midline and the amplitude. So I need to find what is halfway in between 6 and 15, that is 10.5. I am going up or down 4.5, so that's going to be our amplitude that we have going on here. So this is the d value, this is the amplitude. This I'm going to let be the phase shift. All right, and the only thing we need to figure out next is the period. Our period is going to be twice as long as this length. So I'm going to do 353 minus 170. That gives me 183 is half the period. So the full period is going to be times 2 of that. So that's 366, must be a leap year. And we can now write the equation. So a positive cosine, because we're starting at the top, amplitude was 4.5. This was our period. So the b value is always 2 pi divided by that period. And then we're going to have t, because they're asking us to use t here, minus 170. That's going to start us. And then we bring ourselves to the midline. And that is our equation. Friendly reminder that at this point you plug it into your calculator. That was my alarm going off because I have to stop recording these pretty soon. You should put your calculator in radian mode and you should graph this, and you already have the window. You know the y values are going from 0 to 15 and the x values are going from 0 to 353 at least. So I'd go to 366, get a full period. And then you would just answer the questions based off of that. So I'm not going to actually answer the questions because I don't want to type this in my calculator. I'm being a little lazy here, but I will describe to you what we would do for things like this. So this is going to just be when t equals 0, what is going to be the value. So I probably shouldn't have used y here. I should have used like daylight over time. So you would just literally let t equal 0, and you have it in your graphing calculator already. So you would just hit trace 0, enter, and it's going to give you exactly what that value is. And then you just remember that you have units here. D is a little bit harder. So we want to know when is there more than 12 hours. So I'm just going to kind of sketch a graph of what this thing would look like. What we're going to do is in y2, we're going to set that equal to 12. Then we're going to do intersect to find what this x value is and what this x value is right here. And we're going to subtract those. So I'm going to do x2 minus x1. I'm going to divide that by the period this time around. And then because they asked for a percent, I'm going to multiply by 100. So this is period. So in this case, 366. And that's going to tell me when I am more than 12 hours of daylight, what percent of the time that would be. All right. The actual answers to these are in the actual notes for this unit because I didn't change these questions. So these are in the applications. There was 2 or 3 days of them. You can easily find them right there. Same thing with this one. I'm going to leave this one alone. Only difference about this one is when they do that how long there, you're just doing what x2 minus x1 is. You're not doing divide by the period because you're not doing a percent or anything. And I'll let you check the answer keys on the in the units for this stuff, right? So like way back when in sinusoidal graphs in one of these application ones here. I don't remember. Oh, by the way, since we're here, there's summaries for all of these things, right? Way up top. And here's a summary of everything you need to know about what I just did. So I'm going to stop rambling. I hope you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.